If you have ever been to Colorado and returned, you might not recognize that this was once an American city you dedicated your whole life to building. Perhaps echoing in the memories of many, Colorado still symbolizes an ideal American dream full of opportunities. It is a peaceful place for those who want to escape the city's hustle and bustle, to slow down amidst the majestic nature, and to return to a sense of simplicity and fulfillment. However, the beauty of Colorado in your memory now perhaps only lingers in the image of an old postcard, faded and worn with the passage of time. Beneath the glistening white snow and the lush green pine trees lies a heart-wrenching reality. Where makeshift tents stretch along the icy sidewalks, empty eyes seem to have run out of hope, and hands huddled around bags as if trying to hold on to the last bit of warmth of life. Colorado is hiding a silent crisis, wrapped in a beauty that is heart-wrenching. Where thousands of people have been pushed out of their homes, out of their communities, and even out of the belief that they still deserve to live as ordinary human beings. In today's video, let's take a look at the dark side of the sanctuary of night stars called Colorado. To see that the homelessness crisis here is not just a number, an urban issue, but a smoldering crack spreading in the heart of modern America. As usual, this is not a pessimistic warning, but a perspective reflecting multiple sources to help the community understand better and prepare proactively. Are you ready to explore the dark side of America's century state? Let's get started right now. Do you still remember the years when a small house in Colorado could be bought with the salary of a factory worker? When all it took was hard work, obeying the law, and paying taxes regularly for you to have a stable, fulfilling life and a home to return to. Back then, Colorado was a dream. Not just a tourist destination with the snow-capped Rocky Mountains, but a place where many chose to settle down after a lifetime of hard work. The small towns shaded by pines, the modest wooden houses with porches, white picket fences, and vegetable gardens in the backyards. That was the America that the previous generation once believed in, a promised land where decent people would not be left behind. But if you return to Colorado today, especially Denver, you might not recognize the place anymore. Beneath the veneer of the city's prosperity are long rows of makeshift tents spread across sidewalks and park edges. More than 10,800 people have no home to return to, huddled by the bus station, clutching tattered old blankets, trying to retain a fragile warmth amidst the biting winter cold. If you just slow down a bit, turn your head towards the street corner, you might just spot a woman around your age, quietly sitting with a cloth bag, her eyes vacant amidst the hurried crowd. Maybe she used to be a teacher, or a retired office worker, a mother who once raised 2 children, and all it takes to push her down is an unpaid rent bill, a job loss, or an event that leaves her without enough money to heat the winter. Each person, each fate in that corner of the street is trying to survive day by day in silence. Not because it was their choice, but because society no longer has a place for them to return to. But what hurts people the most is not the cold, but the feeling of being forgotten. They have worked their whole lives, paid taxes, and upheld the law. Now they have to fight for every meal, every safe night's sleep. On the very sidewalks of the country they once believed would never abandon them. Colorado is still beautiful, but that beauty is gradually being overshadowed by the despair and silence of thousands of fates left behind. If even those who have shouldered this country for decades no longer have a place to call home, then who is the American dream still for? Denver, the capital of Colorado, once a symbol of a modern, dynamic America where the economy thrived, young people flocked to seek opportunities, and tourists from everywhere admired the beauty of the city nestled beside the Rocky Mountains. But if you walk along Curtis Street, Civic Center Park, or the Capitol Hill area today, what you see might make you question your own eyes. Long lines of faded tents huddled under the shadow of government buildings like silent traces of a crisis being overlooked. More than 4,000 homeless people are living in Denver, a number that accounts for nearly 1/3 of the total homeless population in the state. But this is not just a number. Those are thousands of lives walking through each day as if walking on thin ice.
It's a tough life. It's a really tough life. Because some days you don't even know if you're going to eat that day.
Life without a home is not just about lacking a roof over one's head. It is a survival battle, taking place quietly every day, right in the heart of America. They don't know where they will go today, where they will sleep, or what they will find to put into their stomachs that have been empty for days. Denver was once called one of the most livable cities in the United States. Now, some areas in the downtown are called humanitarian red zones, places where the authorities have to set up portable toilets, field medical stations, and during the harsh winter, even allow the homeless to light public campfires to keep warm, in order to warm a life that is becoming more fragile than ever. Colorado Coalition for the Homeless calls those campfires a symbol of a crumbling housing system. Because each campfire not only burns with dry wood, but also with the last hope of those who once had a home. Some people choose to live outdoors instead of going to a shelter because they don't want to leave behind their small dog, their only remaining friend. Some people have psychological issues, fear enclosed spaces, or have experienced violence in shelters. They choose a corner of the park, under a bridge, or the entrance to an old warehouse to avoid the wind and rain. They are not irresponsible. They are doing the best they can, with resilience and sometimes with the kindness they hold onto amidst adversity. The scariest thing in Denver is not just the bone-chilling cold, but what happens when dusk falls.
Denver, I will never stay down there. It's like once the sun goes down, it's crazy.
The last rays of sunlight faded behind the distant mountains, and the city seemed to step into another world, silent, frigid, and filled with the shadows of quiet figures. Like a post-apocalyptic movie, but without special effects, without a director, just real people struggling minute by minute to survive. No one is born to sleep on the street. No one chooses to live in the cold. But when society no longer has enough room for everyone, it is often those who know how to love who have to sacrifice the most. The big question is not about who they are or where they come from, but rather, how did a city once considered a land of opportunity become the capital of abandoned souls? And if this can happen right in the middle of Denver, then where is safe? There is a bitter reality unfolding in Colorado, a state once considered a desirable place to live, now becoming a silent battleground for the survival struggle between income and cost of living. In Denver, a small one-bedroom apartment has an average rental price of up to $1,800 per month. Meanwhile, the minimum wage in Colorado is only about $14.42 per hour, equivalent to $2,300 before taxes each month. In other words, almost all the money that young workers earn through hard labor has vanished just to exchange for four walls and a locked door. But their lives are not just limited to that. Other living expenses such as gas, groceries, heating, water, and medication are also gradually rising without stopping. Even when living frugally, a person in Colorado needs at least $2,632 per month to maintain a minimum standard of living. For elderly people living on Social Security, their income usually only ranges from about $1,200 to $1,500 per month. With that level of expenses, they can't even afford to rent the cheapest apartment, let alone have enough meals or buy the prescribed medications. Many people have started cutting back on prescription medications, skipping regular checkups, eating less, and enduring the harsh winter just to save a little more on electricity. A 67-year-old woman shared, "The weather in Fraser is really harsh. I feel like my blood vessels have completely frozen. But I also don't dare turn on the heater. Last month's bill already took up more than half of my pension. This is no longer about wise spending or saving, but rather an uneven battle between trickling incomes and ever-increasing living costs. a battle that many people lose, even though they did nothing wrong. They were once the ones who contributed to building this society. Now, they have to live on food stamps, charity meals, and quietly count the spare change in their wallets, as if counting the days they can still hold on. We are living in a country where those who once supported prosperity, now, when they ask for a small favor, they are turned away by the very place they once supported. So, what can still be called fair if a lifetime of labor is not enough to keep a roof over one's head? And when will we stop considering survival a privilege instead of a basic human right? Not all migratory birds find spring. There are flocks that fly thousands of miles in hopes of finding warmth, only to land in a place even colder than where they left. Colorado used to be a place where many Americans moved to start a new life. Especially after the pandemic, thousands of people have left expensive states like California, New York, or Illinois to come here, bringing with them the hope of a place with cheaper housing, easier jobs, and a more comfortable life. They are the migratory birds. Migratious. Not seasonal, but driven by the instinct for survival. But what they didn't expect was that spring in the sanctuary they were looking for had long disappeared. The cost of renting a house in Colorado is no longer cheap, leading to higher prices for everything else. Income is not keeping pace with rising prices, and life here, instead of being easy, has turned into a tiring race with bills, pressure, and the uncertainties of life. Domestic immigrant families, those who left their hometowns, sold all their possessions to start over, now find themselves gradually being pushed back in the very place they once placed their trust. Some people have to live temporarily in trucks, some have to return to the places they once left, and some no longer know where to go next. In Colorado, winter is not just the weather. It is a symbol of a cold period enveloping life, where the chill does not come from the mountain winds, but from policies that have not adapted in time, from the silence of the community, and from the indifference of systems that once promised to protect humanity. Perhaps those flocks of birds took flight with the belief that somewhere spring still existed. But when they landed, what they received was an endless winter with no end in sight. The winds in Colorado now not only blow through the canyons, but also seep into the shattered dreams. The families huddling in gas stations, parking lots, or hastily erected tents in the dark. Is there still a place for those who are searching for a peaceful place to live? Or is America now just a series of winters in succession, with the birds continuing to fly, but not knowing where they will stop? The homelessness crisis in Colorado has gone beyond the realm of numbers. It is no longer the story of a few isolated individuals abandoned by life, but it has become a persistent pain, quietly cracking the very foundation of society, where those who are the most vulnerable always fall first. The government is not standing still. They spend millions on temporary housing programs, street medicine, and affordable housing construction. Policies like House Bill 21-1271 were once expected to be a turning point, allowing the city to partially remove legal barriers and promote income-appropriate housing projects. But all efforts seem like scooping sand with a sieve. Because while demand is increasing rapidly every day, supply is being constrained by the very political and social bottlenecks. The residential area opposes building houses for low-income people due to concerns about a decrease in property value. The authorities have to spend months obtaining permits, creating plans, and then waiting for budget allocations. Charitable organizations struggle with procedures, constrained by laws that prohibit the use of federal funding for flexible winter shelter models. And while the meetings discuss solutions, the homeless continue to sleep on the cold ground. Each night, another person. Each morning, another shattered dream. We are facing a harsh reality. The current policies are only enough to address the surface, but cannot touch the root. Because the root of this crisis lies in an economy that is no longer tolerant of the poor, and a society that is gradually losing its ability to empathize with those who are left behind. Worse yet, policies often view homelessness as a situation to be managed, rather than recognizing it as a direct consequence of inequality in housing, in job opportunities, in healthcare services, and even in being heard. Therefore, no matter how many millions of dollars are spent, no matter how many housing projects are drawn on paper, the problem remains unchanged. Are we trying to solve the homelessness crisis, or just trying to clean up their unpleasant presence from places that don't look good? Do we want to live in such a society, or in a society where those who have fallen still have a chance to rise again? Colorado is walking a fine line between development and losing itself. When rental prices soar, when thousands of people can no longer afford a roof over their heads, when campfires are lit in public parks so people can survive the winter, the questions we ask are not just about the present, but the future. The future, if things continue as they are now, will come when the elderly, the poor, and the vulnerable may no longer exist on Colorado's social map. They will be pushed far from the center, far from healthcare services, far from the community, and eventually, out of the statistics altogether. And the consequence is not just the loss of individuals, but the loss of the pieces that make up the soul of a state, once proud of its diversity, its kindness, its community. Because if a place only has room for the healthy, the wealthy, and those with tech skills, that place will soon become cold, not just because of winter, but because it will no longer have any human warmth left. Worse yet, the younger generation is leaving. They can't buy a house. They can't find stable jobs with a living wage. They watch their parents grow old, quietly bearing the burden of bills and food stamps. And they no longer believe that this is a place where they can raise a family. And so, a city once bustling and vibrant will gradually become a place people just pass through, no longer choosing to settle down. For middle-aged people, retirees, those who once proudly called this place home, the future suddenly becomes an abstract concept. They no longer dare to think about tomorrow. Not sure if they can keep their lodging for another season. Don't know how cold the coming winter will be, and whether they can still endure it or not. A state that cannot retain its people. What else can it hold on to? Without community, without compassion, without a place for the weak to lean on. The beauty of Colorado will eventually become meaningless. Is this still the place we once called home? Or just a temporary shelter until we can no longer hold on? Sometimes, the solution doesn't lie in changing the entire system overnight, but simply, we don't ignore when someone needs to be seen. The homelessness crisis in Colorado is not a sudden storm. It smolders, quietly and persistently, like winter stretching over the Rocky Mountains, bitterly cold, silent, and no one knows when it will end. We have seen it take shape through each decision, each budget cut, each quiet street where people set up tents to sleep overnight. But now, if there is one thing we can do to change, it is. We cannot remain silent any longer. None of us can fix the entire system on our own, but each person can be a part of something kinder. Sometimes, just a non-judgmental glance at someone huddled by the roadside or a simple act of kindness can soothe the heart of someone with nowhere to return to in the biting winter. If we are willing to listen instead of blaming and change our perspective on the homeless from being a problem to making them feel welcomed and still a part of society. We are used to living in an America where everyone has to fend for themselves. But if everyone only looks out for themselves, then when one person falls, there will be no one to lend a hand. And then, we ourselves could be the next. No one out there ever thought they would end up like that. They don't need pity. The only thing they need is to be seen as human beings, with names, ages, stories, and the right to live with dignity. We need to start with empathy. Then from there, action. It's about connection. It is the courage to show that this nation thrives only when no one is allowed to be left behind. And perhaps when we start looking at each other with eyes of compassion, Colorado and America will once again become a place where everyone wants to live, rather than a place where the vulnerable are pushed aside to make life look neater. So, will we choose to continue turning our backs? Or will we choose to start looking at each other as human beings? Colorado is still beautiful. The snow-capped peaks, the pine forests, the winding roads through the golden sunlit valleys. But that beauty is being overshadowed by thousands of untold stories, thousands of nameless people. Homelessness is no longer someone else's problem. It is knocking on the doors of every neighborhood, every family, every mind. And if we keep seeing it as a social issue instead of a part of the very life we are living, then one day it might just be us, or our children, huddled in a corner of the street waiting for a gaze that doesn't turn away. We don't need a miracle. We just need a little courage to start with the smallest things, understanding, sharing, and not staying silent. What do you think about the homeless hell in Oakland? Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel and stay updated with our latest videos. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video. Note: all the content in this video is information I have compiled from various news sources, public documents, and excerpts from reputable reports, aiming to provide you with a clearer and deeper perspective on the homelessness situation in Oakland. The video is created for the purpose of analysis, exploration, and sparking discussion, without criticizing any organization, individual, or government.